everybody, and welcome to Rocket Lasso Live, episode 20 of season 3. We're already 20 episodes in on this one. It's a lot of episodes in a short time. It is a regular episode. I'm looking forward to it. How is everyone doing? Welcome R3, R3D, a new person. Sean, yes, I got a haircut. Burned, welcome. Scott, X-List, David, Tabs, Zach, Travis, Sphere, E39, Jaspel, Eric, Motion, Monthys, Tobias, Mr. Matt Dog, Animation Hamster, Peer, Oliver. We got people popping in quickly. Bralius. How's everybody doing? I hope, well, this is slowly sinking. Let me tighten it. Okay. I was actually recording the beta introduction video for the next beta of the next tool, which I hope to get to the beta testers very soon. We've got a lot of work to do in a short time, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I think it's a regular episode. We'll just tackle questions from everybody in the audience. Let's go over the rules. If you have any links, start posting them on YouTube. There's people watching on Twitch and on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you cannot post a link, but you can go to Rocket Lasso on Twitch, and you can post links in there. In addition, but you can type out a question. I like typed out questions. That's completely fine. And make sure that whatever you're linking to, that I can see the artist or the studio that put it together, because if I can't and can't give credit, we will not tackle it. Also make sure that you're calling out the specific effect or, just the thing in general that you're going for. Otherwise, I don't know how to tackle it, what aspect of it you're interested in. So let's see. Yeah, we got more people popping in. Vincent, Gabriel, Brian, RBLX, Sid, Sage. We got a good group of people, and we got questions coming in already. Mick made it in with the very first question, so let's tackle that one first. Muting the audio, switching mode, and I'm going to click the link and check it out. Bing. Let's see, Digital Artist Show Reel. Actually, before we, don't log me in. I'll pull that up on the screen in a second, but I guess as important general notation on things, I'm probably going to be presenting for NAB for Maxon in October. That should be cool. It's a ways away, but I'll be preparing for that. Like I said, we're getting ready to launch another beta. Actually, several betas in a row if we can make it work. So more tools on the horizon is the hope. And of course, I played the ad right before it started of the brand new Ricochet, which launched exactly a week ago. And anybody who is supporting on Patreon, there are discount codes for getting Ricochet even cheaper. If anybody has any Ricochet questions, we can pop those in. But, I'm not specific. This is not a Ricochet stream, but I'm happy to answer any questions there. Oliver is asking which plugin was easier to develop. Rocket Lasso has released 2 plugins, Recall and Ricochet. Recall and Ricochet. And it's hard to say which one was harder. There's a lot more fun problems to solve, I'll say, in Ricochet, where it's like, okay, we're trying to get this to align with the surface and, be as efficient as we could possibly make it. And those types of things are challenging, but kind of in a like, these are logic puzzles sort of way. But Recall interfaces with Cinema 4D in a very specific way, and making it as compatible with different versions of Cinema and just mechanically working within the Cinema paradigm made that one very specific to do, and not in like a cool math problem sort of way, but more like, okay, we got to do a lot of work to make sure things are compatible and just sort of work for everybody. So it was more fun, I'd say, to make Ricochet. Way more time was spent on Ricochet, but that time was more enjoyable. Let's see. Yep, seems all good. Okay, let's go and switch the screen back again since we covered that. Bing. And then here's a link. And let's see, did you specifically... how'd you go about creating this effect using Cinema 4D instead of the usual Photoshop and After Effects method? Dangerous type of question. So what do we got here? First of all, I'll mute it so that I don't get strikes from YouTube. This is from Oscar Phillip, I'm going to say, but we've got the umlauts and whatnot, so I'm not sure how that modifies it. So let's see what Oscar's got. Presumably this is relatively short because you didn't call out a specific effect, so you got his name coming on. And how'd you go about creating this effect? There's no time code, so what's the first 5 seconds? Okay, there we go. First 5 seconds. Do you mean his intro? That? Like these drawing on? I guess that is sort of more of a Photoshop After Effects type of thing where this moves into 3D. It's funny to like he's got a whole artist demo reel, but the thing you're most interested in is his name drawing on. Let's see. So I'm assuming you're talking about this effect. I mean, well, a big part of this goes to the appropriate place to do this would be something like After Effects. Like, can we do things like this in cinema? Yes, but is it going to take like a lot more time and effort to do it that way? I would also say yes. So is that the most efficient use of it? Definitely not. If you're going to draw these types of things on, a lot of this is just texture. Let's do some basic versions. I can make it interesting for sure. So that is what we will attempt. So I'll go to a perfectly front view here, and using the sketch tool, let's draw some cursive. And there's not many things I can write in cursive anymore. So I guess I'll just do a terrible job of drawing the word Chris on a mouse. So that's my excuse there. So anyway, it's continuous. But you'll see here that there's like several like kind of loops where it loops. Actually, it loops up, and then how's it go up and then down? I guess maybe that went, and then that spun around that way. Curious. Oh, it's split in both directions, so that's how that one happened. But anyway, a super duper basic version I'm thinking would be, let's take that and sweep it. So that gets fed into a sweep, and then inside there I'll feed an end side as well. Very large, T for scale. Scaling it way down. More subdivisions. Give it 12 sides. I wonder, I'm trying to think if I would want this to be a volume or not. Depends if we want to blob in. It might be better to do it as a volume now that I think about it. So let's do it as a volume. Now, we could just drag this in immediately, but we're going to want to draw on this spline, and it's a little bit obtuse, but you can actually do that using the Mograph, MoSpline. So we drag a MoSpline. I set Spline to spline mode. I want to return a line, and then under spline I can feed it a different spline. Now we have this object tab and we have this offset. So you can see I can actually drag this across and it will fill in a copy of the spline. So visually hiding the original one, we can do this as an offset. And something that's kind of cool is you could do a short length and grab this offset and drag it, and you'll see that both lines will offset. So that can also be kind of neat. But in any case, I think that we do just want it to be drawing on, so we'll keyframe that. Although, I think we want this to be a little more evenly spaced. I think, well actually, as I keyframe it, we'll be able to see. So Control D, under key interpolation, I'll set this to linear. We might curve it later, but for now, let's set to linear. At the time of 0, I want that to be 0. We'll just assume 90 frames is good. Drag that up to 100. So let's hit play, and that should be linear now. So let's see. And do you see, it's not as bad as I thought it would be, but do you see how there seems to be parts where it's a little extra fast, like on this H part, like it travels that part really quick. But then here on the terrible R, you can see it's a little bit slower, and that's the way the spline is being interpreted. So right now it's on adaptive Bezier. If we change that to uniform, and yeah, now look at it. Now it's a constant speed drawing across. So there's a difference between those two interpretations, these intermediate points. It determines how it sees the spline, and now it's seeing it uniformly. So yeah, so that will draw that on, and then we can give it some thickness via sweeping this end side, or as I mentioned, creating a, I wonder if it'd be, there's a lot of methods we could do, but let's put it into a volume. That will probably slow us down overall. I can think of reasons to do both. Honestly, I'm back to kind of leaning towards doing it in a sweep. I'll explain my reasoning for that in a moment. So that is only going to show, oh yeah, oh yeah, here's the thing. The MoSpline comes with a width. So you see there's a width that comes through. So now the width of my spline is not determined by the width of the inside, but instead by this parameter, which is interesting. I can't say I usually reach for that as a property, but we can drag this in and modify it here. We could just do it directly in the sweep, but because we're using a MoSpline, we've got this as an option as well. So I think maybe we'll have the start of it be pretty skinny, and then we'll have it very quickly go up to this wider shape. And then going to the end, let's see what the overall shape is. Again, I'd like the end to become a little bit more pointed. And if we want to, I can just pick some arbitrary spots to be like, oh, those are thicker, these are thinner, just to get some variation. There's different methods we could do. A couple of additional sides to it. And yeah, so that's the super duper basics. Now, a lot of the stylizing of this, you can see that that will be animated. A lot of the stylizing of this thing is going to come from the material, and we'll keep this in vanilla because it's mostly just a silhouette. Oops, I dragged the wrong thing over. Open up the material editor, and I'm thinking we probably want to use luminance. So under luminance is fully luminant. We could do it, let's do it with an alpha. So in the alpha, we can start feeding it different things. So we'll have to play because I'm not sure how things are getting wrapped, but if I say something like a gradient, then we should see, we hit render, you should see that's going to kind of fade as it travels around the corner. It's going to loop though, and it's looping around twice. Or how do I say this? There's a front and there's a back to it. So if I wanted this to be fully accurate and kind of take up the width, depending on the orientation of it, we probably need to pull this into like the middle half of the line. It's going to be hard to eyeball, but assuming that's giving me accurate feedback here, which is honestly a little hard to tell because I don't know how it's wrapping. But now you can see the gradients is a little bit more controlled, but honestly I'm not sure of the way it's looping around. Yeah, see, that seems to fade it out properly. Am I thinking of this properly? I don't think so. I think we're seeing through it, so it's very unintuitive for the back side of this. Although it does seem to be sweeping in a pretty organized way. I'm trying to think of the best way to show this. Something I'm thinking that might be helpful would be feeding in a arc. If we take an arc and set that to be a full 180, then now you can see we have half of a circle. Feeding that half circle in instead of the inside, are we seeing only the front half? So yanking off the material for a moment. It seems consistent, but it's sideways right now. So that arc, let's try adding 90 and adding 90. That is a weird result. Why did it do that? Huh. Look at it. Why is it getting bigger as I approach 90? That's strange. Well, I just want to see the front side of it. See, that's correctly there. I think I was correct on my 90, but as we approach 90, it becomes infinite. It could just be the rotation of this and the way it's trying to scale. There could be a logic to like the way that's programmed, but unfortunately, it is not cooperating with what I wanted to do. I just want to see the back half of the geometry to get it properly mapped. Yeah, that's slightly not working. Well, this gradient was only one thought, so let's try doing a second thought. So under alpha, we want the fall off. I can never remember where the fall off is hiding. I think it's an effect. Yeah, effect, fall off. So this fall off is, let's apply the material. The fall off is now looking for the top side of this. This is a really good way of adding snow to an object if you've never done it. And I think, yeah, we're in a frontal view. So if this alpha is set up in the way I think it is, no, it's the bottom side. Maybe it's the black that counts. So if I were so inclined, I could pull that like that. There we go. So by doing this setup, you can see that this is a way that you could add snow onto the top of an object, making another material, make it red, drag that there, and now you can put the white on top of it, and then you can see that there's kind of like, it's got dust or snow on the top. So that's a fun thing you do in a pretty straightforward way. And just by clamping those together a little bit tighter, you'll see that it'll be harsher on the line. So that's just the idea of that. But now what I would like to do is we've got that gradient, but I want it to have a bit more of an orientation. So currently it cares about Y, but let's also care about, is that X? I'm not sure. Move, object. Yeah, it's X. So let's try X1. And yeah, it seems okay. These overlaps are going to mess with us, so that maybe puts us back into the world of doing it with a volume. I haven't decided fully yet. I think I wanted this direction to be -1. Yeah, so it becomes very it's coming from a 45 degrees from above and the left side. So you can see how that might fill that out. Now, I haven't specifically ever done this before, but if I give that a full spectrum, that should be a spectrum from perfectly white to black on those edges. So if we, let's go to the end there. If I were to remap that, I mean, I know we've got that alpha, but I want to control that independently, feed this into a colorizer. And what if we started duplicating? And you say double knots, so you can always right click on a gradient and say double, double. So I've doubled a couple times. And now right clicking and say distribute knots, and this could put even spacing between all of them. So you can see we get these stripes, and that should, yeah, you see, look, I'm getting stripes wrapping around, and the stripes are in alignment with the direction of the object, which is kind of cool. That's working maybe better than I thought that aspect of it would. So that is one layer. And that, well, first of all, inside of it, we could obviously randomize this a bit, like pull that out, pull this one out, and just, you know, make these not quite so even in their distribution. And get, you know, different size stripes going around. And now that that is the case, copy that and feed this into either a layer shader or a fusion. Layer gives us more options. So inside of there, I will paste a duplicate of this. And now we got two of them. We've got all this crazy gradient. Honestly, it's a fall off that I want. So maybe let's reset this. Reset that gradient to something simple. And that is now the top layer. It's going to, I think, not render properly until we turn off image alpha. And now we're back to this. Now we just have this simple fall off. If I start cropping in that fall off, yeah, that made more. I want there to be less. Now you see only that top part is getting highlighted. Those two layers can get combined in some more advanced way. Let's say overlay. And yeah, so it's starting to give us a little bit of stripe on it. That was one thought. I'm just trying to combine a bunch of different things. Completely different and unrelated. We could create a noise. This noise is set to normal, so you can imagine that this is the only thing having any effect, even as if we weren't in the layer shader. Setting that noise to be two-dimensional, it is now going to stretch itself all the way along this. So just by rendering, I think we're going to get the vibe of some stripes. It's a little large, so let's put that down to 11. And you definitely feel those streaks traveling downward. So that's X. I think Y is the one I want, so I'm going to say 1,000 there, and that should start stretching that more. Make this larger. And yeah, so now you're starting to feel those randomized stripes. And I think the randomized is just superior in the circumstance. Crank up the contrast, and now you can see it's a different way of getting these really long stripes traveling along. The advantage of, well, there's two different things. Because we're using a sweep, I'm able to get these streaks because the sweep automatically generates really good UVs. If this was on a volume, there are no UVs, not like this. So we couldn't map things around. But that Fresnel trick I was doing, not Fresnel, but the fall off trick, that doesn't care about UVs. It's just a direction. So that technique would have continued to work even in a volume. So there's different reasons depending on your setup to do the different ones. But that one's, you know, just creating a nice stripe overall, and that could be combined several different ways. Now this is, I guess the UVs, it doesn't look like it's stretching it actively. If I pull this way back, no, it does compress it. Excuse me. This is compressing it. So we'd probably have to counter animate this length in order to make sure that that was not stretching as it goes, depending on if we want it to stretch or not. This will stretch along with our object. Could be cool, might not be what you want. Now we're set up really simply here. Let's make a very simple render just so we can send this out to the picture viewer and generally see what we're dealing with. And yeah, it's going to render crazy fast. So you see how that is stretching along, but pretty quickly I don't feel like we're going to see the stretch too much. So that can give you some pretty nice streaks right away. And then you can imagine combining that with some of these other ones we're already using. So if I copy and then paste that colorizer, and I could have dragged it and it would have duplicated, but set that to an overlay. So if you're going to do an overlay, it's a good idea to have a little bit more contrast. So now, yeah, now you see that there's definitely more solid up near the top than the bottom. And now that that has been done, we could increase the contrast inside the layer shader via some sort of effect. Now, there's not a lot of options here. I guess the best one would be a colorize. I guess a posterize might work. Because, yeah, you get the width, so that's actually not bad. If we said I just want one level, that's going to be black and white, and we get this nice smooth transition between the two, and it's actually a really good workflow. Instead of cranking something up to 100%, you can do it this way. So now, yeah, look at that. That's looking pretty nice. So we get these streaks, and then this is a little bit of a soft transition between the two. If we crank it down, it is, you know, it's black and white, and those pixels will be really harsh, no transition. But even just 1% is going to like start straightening those out a decent amount. So yeah, look at those nice smooth lines we get. Now, the amount that these streaks are represented is actually pretty good already. I thought I'd have to push it further, but something I do like to do is if we just drag this image up, we can put a second version of the same thing and overlay again, and that should push the streak effect even more. Although the doubling up of the offset, the overlay in this case, seems to have kind of killed it. So, not this time. But yeah, those are actually looking pretty good as far as streaks are concerned. Let me think. What else might I want? Well, let's look at the reference and see if there's other interesting bits. First of all, we got the tip of these drawing on, but you know, I was kind of going for this final kind of scratchy look. Although looking at this, it feels a little bit more like a stamp. You know, like if you have a stamp, it looks kind of like little bits of the rubber mist pressing down. Is what the final look looks like. In this case, I stretched out the noise a lot. Oh, I thought I was doubling the noise. Okay, if I would do the overlay thing better, let me change that to normal. Move the Fresnel below, move the noise above, overlay the noise, and then if I duplicate the noise with a second overlay, that should emphasize the stripes more. I guess there's still more contrast. Well, the order of the overlay is apparently really important, so I'll just undo that. Go back to where we were because it's giving us the best stripes right now. Yeah, so we get those streaks, and if we wanted, I could, you know, scale this down. Those can be really short, and now you see we'll get like these nice little jitters going, and that posterize is going a long way for those really looking kind of neat. Depending on how long we want them to be, we have almost complete control over the look of those, stretching them just a little bit, a lot to imply the distance, or, you know, or honestly, we could change this to not be a 2D material, but we could say it's a world material or a frontal projected one. So let's just go to a regular texture, and if I say, hey, material, I want you to be frontal projected, that doesn't have any effect on the fall off. That is absolute. And now you can see I get this perfect frontal projection of the noise however I want. And now it's front projected. So in this case, it's kind of absolute. So we could change this to some different noise types. Something like Poxo, this is maybe a good situation for that. Well, that's going to make it super dotted. But if we invert this and get the right contrast, we start getting the black showing up. Yeah, you can see we start getting this really nice stippled look going. And then I can stretch that up on Y, which is now kind of a universal direction. So now we'll get these absolutely vertical lines going. I love layering up noises like this in cinema. Now that we're treating this like 2D, like look at, you know, there's some shading effect on this overall, and it definitely doesn't feel 3D. So I do like this kind of speckly look on top of it. That's a frontal projection. We probably would, I'm trying to think of there's a way of combining the two. We could, I don't want to layer up that many things, but I'm digging this look on top of it. It is flat, so those won't move. If we're inclined, we could modify it in various ways, but yeah, I'm going to accept that that is the way that looks. The tip here, several ways. I mean, you'd probably want that to be thin as it travels around. That's a thought. So we could either have it fade out on the leading edge is something we could do. So that's another layer we could do in the alpha. Creating a shader gradient. Change this to V and hit, let's see, how's that working here? I think it's fading out as it goes forward, but man, it's hard to tell. Oh, it's a frontal projection. That's why it was hard to tell. Yeah, that's a frontal projection. This might be fine. If I say this goes back to being UV mapped, and that should, that's going to look more sense. It's going to fade out near the tip, and then we can pull this up, and now only the tip fades out. So that's what I was going for there. Going up a layer, let's temporarily hide that. Take a look at this. And because of this noise, it's set to texture. You see it's just kind of still working the same way without a frontal projection. If you want to be absolute, we could also set this to world, and it might not look any different in this context. But yeah, so that's working well. Now, in the alpha, we can say, okay, gradient overlay, I would like you to multiply on top of everything. And now we've got that fading out leading edge. That could be moved below the posterize, and that's now multiplying on top of that. And let's turn off caps. We don't need those. Sweep, caps, nope. So now we don't get that weird cap there. But now you see it's faded out, but it's actually back a little bit. Let's try and move it to a spot we can see. And now you can see how, just the way the fade out, you see how the dots are a little bit less there, and they're moving forward. I don't know, it just works nicely. I'm going to pull back a little bit. Yeah, there we go. So just a little bit less on the width, which is a transition. And now, I don't know, that feels pretty neat up on the edge there. And that can continue forward. Even though here it looks like it's stretching, it's not going to stretch based on this projection mapping anymore. So yeah, we get that nice fade out going. What are some other things? I mean, we could get a glow on the front edge of this. Pretty straightforward. A lot of different methods you could do with that if you were inclined. Given this setup, let's look at the reference. I mean, I'm not going to try and like completely match this because those types of glows better suited for some other for After Effects or something like that. But a basic thing we can do is say make a light. It has no illumination, but it does cast visible light, and then we get this big old circle. Ooh, I wonder if that would. I thought that could be something neat, but we'll wait a moment to get there. I don't know if it would work at all. Shrink that significantly. Let's hit render and see. Yeah, you see this nice glow. We can change the details of the fall off. Actually, the visibility doesn't really have a fall off, but you can map it to a gradient, I think. So let's see. That should be, if I pull this in, does it change it? Yes, it does. So invert that. And now we can control the way this fall off works. Turn that off. Do we have complete control over that? Yeah, but we could pinch this in and change the way that light looks. If we're inclined, I'll make it brighter. Yeah, so you get that nice bright light. Anyway, I'll just say, hey light, I want you to have an animation aligned to spline tag. And keep in mind we have a MoSpline that's automatically growing itself forward. So if I say, hey, just align to the MoSpline, it should snap to the back, but I'll say, hey, on the front. So now it's always going to be on the leading edge there. So as that MoSpline draws on, it's going to be hanging out there in the front. Keep in mind, it is going to be ahead of where we said that gradient should do the fall off. So you see it's actually quite far back. So we have, the gradient is a non-absolute way of doing it. I'm trying to think of what I would do. We could just scoot it back on the line, like say, okay, don't go as far. And that might need a few keyframes to make sure it's actually hanging out in that part that's fading away. The light, I want to be chilled out a little bit. And then something I was thinking that could be neat would be, can we make this show volumetric? So shadow, soft, volumetric, and will that, I think that's all we need. Oh, no illumination. We might need to turn that on. I was hoping to see this material. It might not be. Also, the fall off is really quick. So let's see, details, visibility, increase the radius. I will scoot that further back somewhere, and let's see. Yeah. Oh, interesting. It seems to be, first of all, it's a very tiny pattern. And you can see a little bit of, yeah, it is working. You see that it's kind of casting out from the center there. Nah, it's subtle. It's not necessarily adding much to the effect to add the volume in, and you will, even though everything's crazy fast, it will add some render time. Sample distance could be shrunk. That'll increase the detail of it, but honestly, it's not having much of an effect. I thought it could be something neat, but I don't think it's adding enough to justify itself. And up here, there's just not enough geometry to block it. So, and we can get that harsh line there, which might be where it fades out near the front. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's a bit of a glow. I mean, obviously, if we were in Redshift or something, we were doing a bunch of post effects on that, we could make this glow look better, or the entire thing overall could be having a bit more of a glow. But yeah, now we just have a little something there. Honestly, I don't like the light there at all. I think it looks nicer just with these streaks going. I'm trying to think of anything cool to add on top of it. Subdivision surface here will smooth out those curves a bit. Shouldn't really break anything, but just smooth them out. Potentially, you could put multiple layers here, like a thought being an entire duplicate of this rig with one of them having a radius shrunk, so it's like one inside and one outside. Now we'll see two different layers, so this inner one could be given a slightly different color, just as a for instance. I don't know if this is a good idea. Luminance, let's go with a purple. That'll be on this new inner one. So now we should see that as like, oh, there's a secondary layer of like stippled color inside of that. If you have a reason to, you could do that. And I guess something that could be even better though would be, what if in this duplicate, let's leave it white and try and get some more splatter going that can fade off from the edges. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. Let's simplify a bit, turn off that one. I would like several things to happen. First of all, we need this to be wider. So wider, significantly wider. And then, nope. Oh, the colorizer is just holding a fall off. I will copy the shader out inside of the layer. Shader, paste. So there's this fall off. And that's all I care about. So none of those are doing anything. This fall off, let's see what it's looking like. So if I render, that's what it's looking like. I want it actually to be frontal, so let's do 0, 0, 1. And this should now be a gradient only on the front edge of it. So let me see if I can map this properly. There we go. So if we put this to the 50% mark, I'll just eyeball that. You'll see this actually white in the center and it fades off near the edges. But depending on, well, that's the space of the object. I could say the camera, and now it's going to be mapped to the camera, and that's going to be even a little bit better. And yeah, so now I get that fall off on those edges. If I wanted them to be a little darker, which I do, I can scoot that there and you can kind of see that transition. The gradient should probably be set to, it is set to smooth. Yeah, it's not as smooth as I want. Let's try linear. No, this dot is going to be sensitive, so let's not scoot it too far. Anyway, now we've got something that should be falling off on the edges inside of the alpha again. We've got the noise, so let's move the noise up and activate it, and then overlay this gradient, and let's see what that gives us. So I think that my fall off is supposed to be based off the camera, but I gotta say it doesn't feel like it's falling off as much in the inner edge. You see what I mean? Like that feels a little more faint. Anyway, let's see what I can do. That's overlay. I'm not going to say multiply. That should really fade it out. So that it definitely fades out on one side. But this is frontal, so there's not much I can do. I mean, bump isn't a thing. That should be perfectly frontal. Possibly this is backwards. I want to say minus y. Oh, there we go. Minus y is minus 1 on z. X, y, z. It gives me the better gradient. Okay. Nice. That should fade off. And I should probably be able to pull this in. The idea here being that we can get, what I want to get is like some speckles that escape out the edges. That's my goal here. So this noise is, let's go darker. So we have, in theory, a lot less, potentially even inverting. Yeah, so very little actually sneaks its way through. Like so. And then, because of the multiplying of the gradient, the multiplying of that fall off, they should be more infrequent near the edge. So then turning on the posterizer should really crank the contrast. And you see right now it's very faint. So now we need to start pulling up the likelihood of them appearing. And you see as I do, some flecks begin to appear. And I guess maybe brightening up the material. Sorry, brightening up the noise. Delete, delete, delete. Inside the noise, we need more brightness. There we go. That should start showing something. There we go. Now we get some little flecks. Frontally projected, but fading off near the edge. Yeah, cool. So that is just a second layer. It's as wide as we want it to be. Turn a second one. And now increasing this to be larger. Turn that off for a moment. To be larger. Yeah, now you see, yeah, those are starting to escape a bit. Very directional. I don't want to go too far. Well, that was the idea. I thought it would be a little neater than that, but that's what you get when you're playing around with this type of thing. You just never know what you're going to get. Yeah, it's even, I don't know that, this gradient is also fading in near the tip, so we should probably keep that on. It's a little extra flex on the edge. That's as far as I'm going to go on this one. We got more questions, I'm sure, to tackle, so let's do a quick render on this thing, which isn't going to be the craziest thing, but hey. There's some neat material stuff in there. And I mean, all the stuff we talked about material-wise here, you should be able to do in your third-party renderers as far as overlaying. Although, I'm not sure they have as nice a posterize as we get. I love that width fall-off on the posterize. It's really good. That edge doesn't get to the very end, so we'll just ignore that for now. Yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had there. I would probably almost want to do a displacement on the bleeding edge of this with a proximal, so that those would be like changing a little bit. We could add a little animation speed onto the overall shape if we wanted to. It's very static right now, but the way they kind of layer up on top of each other is kind of neat. And then if I can do this pretty quick, it's just a random thought. So we get those specs going, but if I were to take this main one and make it a lot less visible overall, so what's the best way to do that? Multiply, that's the leading edge. So this colorized gradient, this is the most important one. If, I guess we just make this a little more gray. Yeah, as I pull back on the gray, everything's drawn a little bit less, although it's not overlaying. What's that? I guess it is overlay. What's the best way to do it? Maybe it would be noise. Take the noise color and decrease the brightness. I want it to show, yeah, I just want some little flecks, but I still want them colored. Like I still want to see the faint, but you see it's fainter now, and a thought is that's this one. If I were to duplicate that a few times and change two things, one being the radius to be smaller, and then number two, grabbing the end point to like get there sooner or later of it, offsetting it overall. And I guess we could actually, even better might be not moving the keyframe, but changing the final offset. So I could like scoot that a little ahead, and then another duplicate of that, and then this one again, offset it to be a little bit more forward, and this time change the radius to be, I mean, we could say larger. The idea here being is there's several layers of it, and each layer is traveling a little bit separately, and you know, in it, as they accumulate on top of each other, then you'd get that filling out more. I just want to see if that shows up at all reasonably. Yeah, I think, yeah, you can definitely feel maybe two passes. It's hard to tell in the render, but let's see. Yeah, do you see it? Yeah, okay, yeah. You can see the effect I'm going for, which is you get that initial line, and then the secondary one is traveling after, and there should be a third. Yeah, the third is just kind of, you see it there, but it's a little more overlappy. But yeah, this is just adding more variation. That's the idea. Okay, well, we were just kind of exploring some fun material stuff there, but I like it. I shall save this as the episode 20 scene files. And if you are supporting on Patreon, you get access to these. So let's see. Sketchy text draw on. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum. So that's one version. Actually, I should save that as B. That's now B. And then I'll hit undo a few times and get back to the slightly simplified version. There we go. So, and I'll save that as A. Bing. Cool. Let's see. I'm going to just randomly scroll through the chat and click a link at random. If I don't tackle your question, then feel free to repost it again, as I seem to be wrapping up one of them. Oh, Windbush is here. What up, man? Thanks for making it. Okay, who's got a question? We got a bunch of them. I'm trying to choose which one. Trey's got one. How'd you go about faking liquid movement in a clear container? You know what? I am not feeling that one right now. So let's check out some other things. Monthlies. What do we got? Let me read. Are those shapes soft bodies or spline driven sweeps? Mute. Ooh, what do we got here? Oh, it's another structural animation, which are always awesome. We'll have to wait for it to loop around again, but it does say Cinema 4D. I'm getting a soft body vibe overall. Those could be driven via stiffness, and that's its original shape. It seems to go forward and backward as a means of looping. These are... yeah, they're moving in an interesting way. I feel like that point... there's something invisible yanking around, if this is Cinema 4D. But we can quickly look at a couple of things. I am curious about that one shape. I want to see if stiffness can give us that effect. So opening up a brand new file. What's an easy way to do this? Actually, a flower shape. That's going to give us the good basics. And change this to be uniform. Actually, the best mode here is subdivided. Subdivided cranked up to 90 on angle, and we can set the exact width length, meaning I can feed this into a sweep and then feed it into an end side. And you can see the exact subdivisions now as they're going, and that's way subdivided. So I'm going to say more spacing, and you can see we get very low poly version of it, which is what we want here. And it looks like 36 is the perfect number because it's subdividing perfectly on those corners. It's probably hitting a 90-degree turn there, honestly, but yeah, so good enough. Those are closed right there. I'm going to ignore that. And now we're going to run soft bodies on that, and no gravity. Control D, dynamics, gravity, 0 gravity. So these should just be static, and we can create some field forces to make them move around. And yeah, let's start out that way. So let's just make these move around. We're going to be doing, you know, soft bodies, which is a little bit more dangerous, so I will save this right away. Okay, super duper basics. Add soft bodies here. Soft body. Our current radius here is 20. So I think we want to go into our soft body settings and say the collision margin is set to half that amount, which would be 10, which means right now if I hit play, there should be very little movement. There might be a little bit. So if I hit play, yeah, a little bit of movement. And like I said, like those were bumping into each other, so I expect those to move. We can increase the sides because that's a post effect, and that's where all the jitter was coming from. So those are slightly pushing away from each other. A smart thing to do would possibly be to shrink this margin just a little bit. And if we went to the original 20, which would be double, you're going to see this is going to like super duper spread out. So I think 10 is the proper number. We could go smaller. It's going to calm it down, but I think the thickness of 10 is correct. So that's a very basic soft body. My main thought was actually as a very simple mechanical test, let's just make a cylinder and say that that is a rigid body. Simulation, a rigid body. Shape, if we want to be real specific, I can say it is a Z plus or a Z axis based cylinder, so that should be very mathematically accurate. It doesn't care about the polygons now, it just cares about the bounding box, and it maps that onto a cylinder. At least that's what I think happens. Reset the gravity, so that's going to pull down. Ooh, I thought I set that to a collider body, but I'll set this to the cylinders dynamics to be dynamic off. So that means they get collided with, but they don't move. So that gets pulled down. You see the whole thing is going to get yanked apart and just fall down. And that, our main goal here, let's make these, let's make them a little more visual. We don't spend much time doing that, but I think it's nice to do once in a while. Remove, add, GGX, and that's fine. No specular, lots of reflection, a little bit rougher, and then that's that material. Let's make another one, and What do we go with here? Let's make copper. I love me some copper. Fresnel, conductor, preset, copper. And that will go onto the sweep. This goes onto the cylinder, just to make them pop out from each other a little bit. So there is our geometry. I would like SSAO for some screen space, ambient occlusion. Those will fall and the whole thing's just falling apart. Cool. Rewind, save. So my first test, how much does stiffness actually help us in a circumstance like this? So stiffness. So we'll do a stiffness of 1, which is pretty mild. And it goes a long way. You see that even with full gravity, that is holding on to it. Now, if we crank that up 10 times higher, it's going to get really difficult for that to move at all. And so I think that is what's happening on that green line that was traveling the other one, where a little bit of stiffness goes a long way. And we could probably crank this up even more. Yeah, so see, that really doesn't want to move very much by being cranked up that much. And we can do a lot of damping, which is going to drain the energy out from that as well. And yeah, like an energy drain will go a long way here. So 99% energy drain on everything is just going to make it so it's not very jiggly. But, you know, there's still going to be some. The end result of that would get smoothed out. I mean, we could increase the points, but of course, the smaller the number of points you have, the better. Smoothing that out, even just one layer, will go a long way. And yeah, so that becomes pretty stiff. So the idea there being, we can do a couple of keyframes. This would be a great situation for Signal from Grayscale Gorilla. But let's add on inside of these settings, primarily the stiffness. Let's keyframe that. So we'll say that there is no stiffness up until here. Keyframe, and then we'll let it transition over the course of a couple of frames up to 111, which is a lot, and we need more frames. 145. Now let's see what that does. Blurp. Oh dear. What was that? Hello. That is not behaving itself. What? That seems like a bug.
Why is that being keyframed suddenly flipping out?
I don't know. First of all, I might want to bring this back, so I'm going to add a Rocket Lasso ricochet, just so I can make this editable and see if a difference happens. Yeah, wow. Okay, so if it's parametric, it's breaking it. And it's kind of funny the way the result happens, but yeah, that was not working if it was live. I'm gonna make a transition quicker in. Ring. It still locks on there, which is funny. I don't want it to lock on, but it is locking on. Fling. I mean, that is kind of the shape it is, but yeah, we can now transition between those different shapes. But yeah, that is, I mean, it's too bad because you have to make it editable. It's always sad when you make it editable, but that's why we made recall, because when you have to make something editable, you often want to bring it back. So we could go and do a whole bunch of crazy things and then be like, okay, cool, but I need to change the point count there or something. So I can just double click the recall tag, and now this has been brought back to the state that it was in, including its tags. I mean, there's settings to change that. We can go into here and say, don't create tags and whatnot. But I would like to, well, do we subdivide? I mean, there's a lot more going on inside here, and it more goes to what are our questions about it. Right now, there's a lot of kind of it's kind of writhing around and doing its own thing. There's a bunch of soft body stuff we could just talk about, which is always fun, making this editable again. Something I was actually kind of curious about, we'll just see how this goes. Temporarily, I suppose I'll kill off the stiffness so it can just flop over again. But, you know, it's still strong enough to, you know, not stretch too much. In fact, I would kind of like it to stretch straighter. So I'm going to say that the shear and the flexion are decently weak. They still have a lot of energy drain, but I think that means it can straighten out more. Yeah, you see that it got straighter, but the structural is what's controlling the length of it. So that didn't get longer. A few extra frames for us. And yeah, so that can get really nice and melty. And, you know, you probably even lower those more. Yeah, you see that's now enabled to get, you know, pretty straightened. It's not trying to maintain its shape very much. I wonder how much damping is affecting those. Bloop, 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 bloop. Yeah, it's a little more stretchy and rubbery, but also kind of nice, so I'll leave those down lower. Okay, so that's something we can keyframe up and down to do the different shapes. Come on, refresh properly. Save. Okay, so a thought here. I'm going to make a new material. Double click to make a new material. And I want to be able to see this thing move. So under color, I will make the good old fashioned surface, probably effect. No, surface. Checkerboard. Good old checkerboard. So let's see. 2x5, maybe? By 5. There you go. That's more what I wanted. So we should be able to see how this is deforming. So if I hit play, we can see it stretch a little bit more clearly. Okay, so come on. We still got that bug where we can't rewind and reset properly. So I'll go frame forward one, backward one, and that forces a reset. Okay, what I wanted to do was add in a simulate force, and we need a field force. And I'm going to feed in as the field force the spline itself. Now, this can be crazy, but let's see what we get. Okay, first of all, this is set to curve and along, so it should be trying to travel itself along the spline itself. So I don't want to see a display box. We don't need those lines. We already sort of know what it's doing. Right now, the strength is pretty weak. I don't expect to see too much of a result, but as we crank this up, yeah, look at that. So, okay, that's doing exactly what I wanted it to do. So the spline itself is a constant force traveling around the entire thing, saying like, okay, I'm tugging down on you. So look at this continuous movement we have automatically from this line, feeding a force into itself to travel downward. Now, I'm not surprised that we're occasionally getting a pop going left and right. That's why, that type of pop is why often you'll see that these, I guess that one snake one is mapped properly, but some crazy things will snap. So oftentimes you'll just apply these simple material, so it doesn't matter if it accidentally twitches and rotates in a particular direction. But I do like that we get this force twirling it around in a particular direction, and will give us more frames. Now, this might only be applying. This might only be applying in one spot really strongly, and the rest of it kind of weakly. So I'm going to give it a offset of 100%, and let's see if we get. Yeah, now offsetting by 100%, it is applying the effect over the entire line, and the entire thing has a constant force getting yanked up. So that could be pretty crazy, but I've never done this specifically, and it's a pretty neat effect. Look at it going super nuts. So that's fun, and it's good. Oh, look at it tangling up around itself and wrapping, and all we've got is it feeding it into itself. If that starts getting overpowered, keep in mind we can always go in and drain energy out. So some linear and angular damping can go a long way. I'll say 99, 99. This might not do anything, honestly. Definitely feels like it's doing something. Yeah, it's draining energy. Yeah, it is draining energy out for the entire thing. So that should calm it down overall. And gravity still is having an effect. So these things are additive. That's good. And this thing's being kind of wacky and traveling around. So that's pretty cool. Let me think. What are other questions I might have here? I mean, adding that force into itself is pretty neat. Let's see. Let's make this a little bit more stable by feeding it into a donut torus shape. Enlarge that a bit, move this up, and that will become the cylinder. Turn that off and make sure that this is no longer being calculated as a cylinder, but as a automatic, so that it can actually see the inner hole. I think it will automatically see the inner hole. Nope, it doesn't. It doesn't like the hole, so now we have to say that this is actually a static mesh. Rewind. Yeah. So I like the settings that we've turned on. I'm going to override this recall tag so I can bring it back to this state. I did just kill off the previous state it's in, but that's really neat the way that's moving around. Now, the way that's traveling around, I am curious. What if we just put in a little bit of stiffness? A little goes a long way, so let's do a stiffness of 1. Now it wants to stay in this shape, and it wants to travel around. Oh, yeah, wow, a little stiffness. Stiffness goes such a long way. 0.1. So now it's going to kind of keep this kinked shape just a little bit, but it's still kind of being forced to travel around. So that can be fun. Let's see. Oh yeah, Mick, I forgot. I was going to talk about the Service Pack 1 that just got released. I haven't downloaded it, so I don't have the new one. Yeah, so that is that. Kill the little bit of stiffness that we have. Frame forward, frame back. And let's make a duplicate of this whole rig. And what I wanted to do, if we can finagle it, is rotate. Oh yeah, I just killed I want the recall to bring it back, but I just overwrote it. What I wanted this to do is one be above and one be below. Even if it's intersecting a bit, it might fix itself. Make it bigger. Pull it up in between. The rotation's real specific here. Well, let's just see if that figures itself out. No, see, that one was passing through that geometry, so it doesn't know what to do. It might eventually yank itself out, but yeah, it's being held in place because I intersected it initially. So yeah, we don't want that intersection. These splines could probably intersect themselves quite a bit, but we don't want this intersecting the geometry at all. And I kind of wanted to simplify the... I don't think there's an arc in the middle, is there? No, so I could grab those. Yeah, just stretch those out a bit. Better. So yeah, those two are looped up. I imagine they'll, the goal here was kind of getting them to tangle up and whatnot. But look at this traveling around. I really like that. Gravity goes a long way here. If we were to chill out on gravity, let's just do 100 on gravity. These should be a lot freer to maintain their shape and even just drift around the overall scene. And the striped material, like I said, is we're going to get those pops as they twist, but I'm just going to get rid of that. And look at this. Look at this self wrap it, it's wrapping around. Actually, that makes sense because the field force right now is applying to both of them, but it's only viewing one of the splines. So one of them is subservient to the other. This outer one is being affected by whatever this inner one does, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, those will wrap around and just immediately look at this crazy, like the life that these automatically have. Yeah, kind of like them independently doing their thing. I'll give that a save in case anybody's interested in the scene file at that point, and I'll save it immediately as the next version because I was going to separate out the field force. So in this one, that field force is on this flower. I'll make a flower 2 and say, dynamically speaking, the forces, it's seeing everything. I'm going to say include. So now that's only going to see that field force. Copy the field force, make it field force 2, and tell these dynamics that it only includes field force 2. And field force 2 will now be fed flower 2, and that just overrides it. So all the settings are maintained. They're each doing their own thing. I will even go in here and say reverse direction. So one is twisting around itself one way, the other is twisting the other way, and they don't care about the forces of each other, but they should still collide. So that's the idea. Oh yeah, look at these. It's almost there's almost like they almost kind of feel like gears twisting in a way. Like there's that kind of there's that type of motion. Yeah, I really like this. That's cool. Boing, blurb. Yeah, the self-coiling wasn't even something I was specifically going for, but the way they're traveling through is really neat. It seems like the I might want to make the end sides just a little bit thinner. The setting those to 18 might be a little more visually representative of the way they're passing through. Let me think. Yeah, well, very different too. Different simulations, even just resetting it. I guess there's a lot going on, but usually Cinema's really good about repeating the same thing over and over again. That is cool looking though. I like it. But what's funny is like there's other ways of making these attract to each other. These are just naturally moving and happen to collide and collapse with each other. Yeah, intestine mosh pit. Very true. Yeah, I mean we could throw as many as we want, but you see I'm already at about 60 frames per second. If we keep on adding more, it's going to keep on slowing down. But the setup we did, it should be easy enough to copy and paste. And now these field forces, I think, should have updated to... Let's see, if I rename this, you see, if I rename this flower 3, I think you'll see that these forces also updated the flower 3, and these dynamics will also be on field force 3 because I copy and pasted. So don't control drag, copy paste. There's different behavior if you do each. So where am I? Forces, you can see, I guess the forces didn't carry over. I thought that would. But let's say include that. Actually, those should have been include. That's strange. That's strange in a bunch of ways. I just copy pasted a bunch of things. Oh, I was dang it. I was clicking on the wrong thing. That. Oh, I put the forces on the wrong thing. Okay, I kind of thought they had looked a little not what I was expecting. Anyway, I fixed it. They're all linked properly, so this is now a third one. And we just move that wherever we want. I do think they're kind of neat when they're interlinked, so let's see if I can do that. Yeah, we don't want it passing through the torus, but there we go. So that's a third one that should be fighting a bit, doing its own thing. Yeah, and you can just keep layering them up. You see I've lost about another 15 frames per second by making a third one, so we could probably make one more and still be kind of running in real time. And keep in mind the dynamic settings we put in will have a big effect. Let me see if that copy-paste trick works better when I'm doing it more intentionally. So copy-paste. And if I were to just take this one and move it over here, it should be independent and not care about anything else, and it should still twist. Yeah, so that you can see the copy-paste worked on itself. And look, just that by itself floating. Look at the form it's naturally taking just by drifting around. Whoa! Yeah, it's so cool. Can't believe we've never done that before. It's such a straightforward thing to think of. Actually, I'm pretty sure I can take partial credit for this because I contacted Maxon when the field forces came out, and you could not feed a soft body spline into a field force. I was like, you can't do this. And they're like, oh, we didn't know that was a thing. So they added it in, and now we have it. And I didn't ever use it that way. Yeah, so now there's another one. Now we're still about above 30. The amount of collisions will change it, but yeah, you just keep wrapping more and more of those around. If somebody makes an NFT out of this, you gotta give me half the money. I'm joking, of course. But yeah, this is really cool. There's a lot of possibilities on this. Maybe I should make a whole tutorial of this because these could be intestines. Do you remember what's the movie Annihilation, where the guy's intestines are like moving around on the inside? It's kind of like what we're doing here, where they're all growing and pulling. Keep in mind that, these are gravity's slightly pulling these down, but we could change gravity. But in addition to that, we could just add more field forces. We could make universal field forces that are telling them to attract to each other. We could make one that says to push apart from each other. We could make one that's saying, hey, go to a particular spot. We could make an overall wind to change the direction that they happen to be going. We could be making some sort of attractor that they're pulled off to the side, and they'd all be stretching out in that way. And these are still live. I mean, it's going to be a little bit dangerous to do, which means I'll save it. But we should, as long as I don't move it too quickly, I should be able to grab this torus and move it around and get those to be reacting even in real time. If I yank it really hard, in the viewport, it'll just let them escape. But yeah, this is still alive for us to do all sorts of crazy movements. This could be wrapped around several shapes that stretch them apart. You make a chain, like a series of chain links, all interlinking each other, but each one is independently kind of spinning around. There's a lot of cool things to be done here. Yeah, I'm glad we made it copper instead of pink. That would be kind of gross. But yeah, that's neat. Yeah, fun question. I think we made something fun out of it. So, let's see. Bihavna, welcome. Quack, welcome. More people showing up. Okay, so I'm going to scroll up and let's try and tackle, let's say we're about an hour in. Let's try and find another question here. Scrolling up. I think I ended abruptly so people weren't ready to repost. Oh, Dean had one ready. Ding. Mute. Let's see what we've got here. This is from Kevin Lowe. Bing, 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 bing. Okay, so we got a series of layered up cubes. They're using Houdini, but I don't see anything here that we couldn't easily do in Cinema. The only one that kind of gives a vague effect that is not trivial is when all three layers layer up on top of each other. And then, yeah, it's just a cube, like inside of a cube, inside of a cube. And every time there's a cut, there seems to be something slightly different, but it's very clean, very neat. I like it. So, let us explore some possibilities. It is a cube with a cube. I'm trying to think of a shape that we can do, but I guess it is kind of any shape. We can explode things in any shape we want. Let's use, let's make a icosahedron, or icosa. That's not the one I want. What am I talking about? I was talking about I want a buckyball. That's what I was actually trying to say. So here's a buckyball. I like those. Make it editable. And then I like melting away these center ones. And we can do that through a... not melt. Melt is going to melt the whole thing away. What am I thinking of? We want... oh, yeah, we want to untriangulate. So... that will pop open a tool, which is now a tool. It doesn't pop up as an individual thing. And now we can start increasing. Let's hit apply and create n-gons. And now if we find a proper angle, you're going to see. And it's not, I don't, oh, maybe it's different than it used to be. But yeah, okay. But they're n-gons now. Simple enough. Untriangulated, made them n-gons. Now we need some extra subdivisions because there's not that many there. Is there anything... any fanciness we want to do on it? Potentially we can make a crazier shape, although the different flat surfaces are part of the variable, so maybe keeping it a little more uniform is a good idea. Maybe. Yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe this was a terrible shape to use, but let's try subdividing. Throwing that into a cloth surface. We will actually... oh, that's weird. That's super weird. Why is it... look at this, it's like not returning some lines. They're n-gons, but... does the cloth not like n-gons? Factor of 0, please. There we go. That's kind of what I was going for. But yeah, I was hoping that those would cooperate more. I wonder, before we do that, if I want to create more uniform shapes, what if I hit I for inner extrude? Don't preserve groups. And if we shrink those, I want to shrink them down to 0. Can we, I don't know if this works. Can we bevel them down to 0? I'm going to add a bevel inside. We are beveling not edges, but polygons. Offset. Where's preserve groups? Don't preserve groups. And I want to pull those in. And does the limit stop it? Mostly. There's sort of an explosion happening on some of those. We'll see if we can deal with that. 0 extrusion. No, don't explode. And we could optimize there, and this will give us relatively even shapes. I would like to shrink those down smaller. I guess we could do them separately. We'll spend the extra time doing it. It's fine. I can't think of an automatic way of doing this, so I'm just going to select all of the 6-sided faces. Nope. Yep. 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 Okay, that should be it. Cool. Yes. Okay. So, mode. Nope. Select. Store selection. Bevel. Limit to selection. Okay. Neat. Now we can do 2 different bevels. So now one of those I can shrink real small. And can we overshoot? I'm hoping it clamps. It kind of does. It's a little bit weird. See this triangle we're getting? I guess maybe they all just collide there. Yeah, that just might make sense. We still might optimize them. And now back to the original shape. Invert. And here's something I like doing now. Because of the way they change the selection tags, I can duplicate the selection tag and say update. And now my current selection is now being added to that one. So very handy. Selection 2, bevel 2, there, and hopefully that just works. It seems to have. Okay, nice. So now I've triangulated this entire thing in a way that's a little bit more even, and it's not perfect, but I will throw that entire end result into a connect object, and I would kind of like to just optimize those into oblivion. So if I increase the connect object enough, you see those kind of snapped in. They're not going to be perfectly centered, but you know, the triangles are pretty even, but you just see it's a nicer subdivision overall. So all that worked together, a slightly nicer subdivision, so that now when I put it into the subdivision or into this cloth offset, cloth surface rather, it's going to subdivide, and this is just like a subdivision surface, but we are triangulating. Anyway, all that work to get a slightly unique looking shape. Bake that down, delete, and no fong tag. Thank you very much. You know what? I'm going to keep those selection tags because I'm going to end up regretting it. Oh, no, they are broken selection tags, so they're gone. Save the file. 3A. Let's call it layers dissolve. Okay, so if we got several different approaches we can do, and we can try and keep everything as parametric as possible, which isn't a bad idea. Oh, and the polygons are going to be weird directions as well. I added a lot of complexity by making a more complicated object here. A thought I do have, though, is to disconnect everything. I guess we'll keep an original. And I will just put it into a null and hide an original, not use recall in this circumstance because it's a different type of scenario because I'm going to want several copies of it. So, anyway, I think disconnecting everything, and I don't know the shortcut for disconnect. Disconnect is UD. I'm going to hit U Shift D to pop open this and say don't preserve groups. So now what's happened is every single polygon has become disconnected from its neighbors. So now, right click, can we find a, I don't think it's in the right click menu. Mesh, conversion, polygon groups to objects. And now this is an empty polygon object, and each one of these is one individual polygon. What I'd like to do now, if this works, although, man, there's a lot of polygons, I would like to run the axis center on these. So tool, no, mesh, axis center. Can I just say, see, those are axis center to what? Center object to center to parent. I'm just going to open up the axis center. I want to, the axis to the center of all the points. That's fine. I want the alignment to the normal. Execute. All right, that worked. Nice. Okay, so all those steps have now made it so that we've got individual objects, and the individual objects are aiming out correctly on the y-axis. I don't trust the other axis. They'll probably be kind of randomized. Yeah, you see the blue is pointing in a different direction every time. So we can only trust the y, but it's something. Now, something I hadn't realized, and let's see if it works this time, is that we can run effectors directly on objects. Am I not crazy in thinking that? Let's drop in this plane effector. Under deform, I'm going to say deform the object. And look, whoa, okay, that's the individual axis. That makes sense. So all those moved out based on their own individual axis. But now, I always thought we had to put this into a fracture object to do it, but now we're just doing it directly on the individual objects. So anyway, the point here being creating something like a linear fall off. Hopefully this doesn't take too long to run. Yeah, now we can pass that through. And you can see that these are the individual polygons. So yeah, we can start doing effects on each of these individually with effectors directly in this setup. So, yeah, now it just turns into a lot of how do we want to layer these individual shapes up. This case, that's pushing out on their own local Y, which is fine. That's a fine thing to do. I'm just trying to think of something slightly unique because a lot of these things, you know, we've all done these types of things like 100 times. A uniform scale of -1. I mean, just having them fade in is not a bad idea. And those could, yeah, I'll just have them, we can still have them pull in from space. So maybe not too far. So they can, as they're kind of scaling in, they'll pull in slightly from a distance. And then let's make this not as uniform. So grabbing the linear field, making it wider, and telling the plane to, I'm going to hit save. The plane I would like also to be observing a random field. The random field is now on top, set to max. I'm going to say overlay. Don't worry about color calculations. This is a uniform scale. I want these small enough to see individual changes. It's not as different as I want. Do we duplicate the random field several times? Maybe. It is an overlay. Yeah, I definitely want a stronger effect. How do we make that way stronger? Mostly through the color remap. I mean, you can make them individually stronger or noise-based stronger. If I change this to not be noise-based, but be random, that means they actually do get a full-on random value from 0 to 1, which is super significant. It's set to overlay, but that would now be better as a multiply, maybe. Maybe overlay does make sense there. Push them out further. Yeah, the random... I'm just not using random the right way here. Not the way I'm envisioning. Not that supervised, but you can see, it's like, okay, boom, right there. One growth effect, a little bit of randomness as they go. And then we end up with that final shape. If we are so inclined, we can make these have some thickness. As a post effect, you can. Probably, it's going to run quickly. Let's see if yeah, that's the cloth surface we can put on after the fact. Yeah, and you see that indeed is giving them some thickness, but let's see how long it takes for me to drag this linear field. Okay, yeah, we're getting like 0.5 frames a second, so not the quickest way to do it. Keep in mind, I did explode this out into a lot of different objects. It's significantly more complicated than even the reference was. So that's parametrically doing it with that cloth surface as a... Honestly, it would probably be a better idea to select all of these and just do an extrusion on them. Although, yeah, before I do that, I think I would like I'm going to put a connect or a recall on here just so I can go back if I need to. So, selecting all... Oh, wait, what was the... If you middle mouse button click, I can select all the children, so I don't want that. Or that. Or that. Or that. And now everything's selected. All the polygons are selected. Letter D for extrude. And I think a little is going to go a long way. Let's say 5. Apply. Now it's going to do a bunch of extrusions. And we do get that gap in between. If we want it to be not there, I can undo and say -5. They'll be intersecting in between, but... And create caps. Yeah, so that leaves the original. Select all R. Yeah, the normals are inverted, so UR to fix those normals. So all the axes are still working and whatnot. But yeah, all we do is create more polygons, not more objects, and it's not a post effect. So I have to imagine this is going to run a little... Yeah, look how much quicker that is than doing it as a post effect. And yeah, so those all scale in, and we end up with that same final object. So that's one effect. Yeah, let's just throw a couple keyframes in. Add 0, and then we'll let this take 90 frames. It is completed right there. Boing. Okay, so that's 1. Now let's give ourselves another 90 frames and make the next layer. What do I want to do on the next layer? It'd be kind of fun and weird. How would I do it? I don't think we can do it. Dang, that would have been neat. I mean, it wouldn't have been too crazy, but I can't think of any way of mapping them on with the correct rotation. I don't know if we'll get anything good from it, but let's try playing with a target. I'm going to copy and paste that entire setup. We've got a plane effector. Oh, also, in order to see it, I'm going to just hit T for scale. And, nope. What was that? Why did it, I was on scale. Why did it move? T for scale. Scale, please. There's no dynamics. Oh, I'm on the plane effector. Ooh, come on. There we go. Okay, so we got a slightly larger one, so we can not overlap the other. I want to play with a target effector. We almost never do that. So this is a plane that is currently scaling things down. Let's not worry about that. Do we do a target effector? Because we can do a target in here, but that might be a different beast. Maybe there's not a target in here. I don't think I've ever done a target from in here. I don't see one. Yeah, I guess it has to be the target effector. So, I do kind of like those, all the panels just being out in the space. It's kind of a weird advantage we get from the axes all being aligned. But anyway, Mograph. Where is it? Target. Drop the target in there. Affect the objects. Now, my hope is, oh, okay. I mean, it's super crazy looking, so already that's kind of neat. And there is kind of a patterned uniformity to it, which is kind of better than I was hoping for. We'll try, don't use pitch. Yeah, so that's going to make these all crazy angles. Yes, use pitch, but give me a up vector. Whoa, look at that one. That's cool. Z minus. I'm just going to try a different one, see which one looks neat. Oh, they look, a bunch of them look cool. Z's the least interesting. Reverse heading. Yeah, that puts the spikes out. So, yeah. But yeah, there's definitely a vibe of like a circular pattern in them. So yeah, target's fun. I don't use it often enough. So we can use that to just have the direction of the object be there, and then we can just fall it off however we want. How do I want? I'm inclined to go random again. Let's do a radial. We never do radials. So that target effector, yeah, actually the radial shouldn't be in the target. We need another plane effector. This one will affect the scale, not the position, uniformly. -1. And objects mode. Blink. Okay, so they're all scaled down to nothing. Fall off and radial. Okay, radial. Start transition, end transition, end transition. Go. Okay, so now we see a full partial radial happening. We can do, I think, 2 iterations. Yeah, there's 2 now. That's a Bucky, so let's do 5. Yeah, we get 5 of those going. And now if we were to take our offset or start angle, yeah, so we can now twirl those inward. And now that I think about it, I think that the target effector does need this because we need to transition in and out of it. So the best bet for that then is put this into a group. I love the group field. In the group field, feed the radial. Whoa. Group field. Take the radial. Take it! Why not? I'm going to delete that from there. Maybe that's having some bad effect. Drag that in. Group field. Take the radial. There we go. Okay. So now the target also can be fed the group field. Bling. Okay. So yeah, as they build on, they will settle into their final position. We could put a little bit more of a delay on the target one, so that's always kind of fun. Radial. We got the offset, which can spin the entire thing. I think that's a nice addition. What's cool is the offset gets its own, I don't know. Maybe that's what was wrong. It somehow ended up in the offset of the group field, which was creating a feedback loop, so it turned red. So good to know. But anyway, if we feed in something simple like, first of all, save, and feed in something simple like a time will be continuously moving forward. And let's unclamp. It'll be constantly moving forward, which should, it's not going to be quick, but yeah, that's going to be constantly moving forward in time as we've got that shape. So that's cool. And then over time, and remember, this is not supposed to be seen until frame 90. We can keyframe the start angle, and at the end, transition that all the way out until it is sealed in. So let's see what that is currently doing for us. Yeah, you see how those are going to keep spinning around, but they're getting weaker and weaker and weaker. So that's cool. Pause. It's going to be hard to see this in real time, so we'll have to send it out to the picture viewer a few times. But I would like the target, which is currently seeing that entire group field set up. I'm going to say, yes, that is great, but you have some delay, and that comes afterward. So that is going to treat it as a spring. And let's give it a significant spring. So, well, and then also we're not scaled out from nothing, so that is affecting the scale, but we don't start out with anything. So do we need to start out from 0? Possibly the radial field needs to transition in. So I'm actually going to take this, pull it to the approximate halfway point. And then the radial field also at that point, yes, should be 360, but in the beginning should be 0. And that should make everything fade out. Yeah, so that's going to fade up, and that one's going to fade in. So we should start seeing a stripe. Keep in mind, these aren't moving. They're individually like scaling up and then scaling down, but now they don't exist. They all will exist, and now they're going to start locking themselves into a final position. And there should be some nice delay. We'll need some extra frames to see it. Yeah, those all seal in, and the final targeting should come after. Whoa. Yeah, the best bet is to render this. Honestly, actually rendering is quicker, or it will cache in the picture viewer better than sending it out as a viewport, and it's going to render so quick that I think we're fine. I kind of like some ambient occlusion, but that's going to like kill our render time, so I'm not going to worry about it. Let's just see what we get. Oh, do I have that first layer turned off? No. What's wrong with this first layer? Why is it not... Oh, that is the first layer. It just took a while to get going. Yeah, I mean, that's as basic Mograph as you can get. And now we should start seeing the tiny little... Oh, they kind of pop into existence in the big way. Oh, I guess that makes sense. There's no... I should probably put a smooth on that first layer because they're just popping into existence. But like all this motion, we'll have to see how it looks in real time. But that's pretty neat. Definitely a lot more dynamic. And like I said, these individual ones are not moving forward. It kind of gives the illusion that they are, but it's just they're staying in one spot, scaling up, scaling down, scaling up, scaling down. Let's see if the echo happens again. So yeah, that kind of completes itself. But yeah, there's sort of the... I guess it's just a wiggle. Let's see how that looks in real time. And it's springy, so I guess it makes sense that they're coming in, going out. Maybe it shouldn't be quite as much spring. Nope. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's way too springy, but I like that second part. There's a lot of motion. It's fun. And then it's one of those things where it's like they kind of come out of nowhere. Let's frame that up on 90. They kind of come out of nowhere. No. Pause this. Now I can type in 90. They kind of come out of nowhere, and then they just sort of settle down out of nowhere, and it's always nice to get that effect when things are too blatant. It's always like, oh, I want it to be more subtle. And here it's like, oh, where'd they come from? And it's like, oh, wait, where'd they go? And they just seal in. So it's a cool effect. We're just... some people are asking if I could have used Fracture, and yes, I think everything would be running a lot slower, though, because it'd be parametrically breaking them apart every time. So it doesn't have to do that, so I think we're just getting better feedback. Yeah, so chilling out on the spring would be nice. And then the other thing, well, you see how these kind of just pop into existence almost at full scale. Something we could do, and I will tell this to only render from frame 90 on, inside of that group field, I can also feed a delay, but this time it's not going to be a spring, it's going to be a smooth, and that should ease them in. And let's just see how that looks. Oh, I think it's trying to ease them in on their initial position as well. That's not exactly what I wanted to have happen. And that started at 90, so that, I guess it makes sense. I don't like it though. Maybe we can keyframe up the strength of the smooth. That would make sense. So at 90, it can be that, but in the frames before, it was at 0. Bing! Turn off color, we don't need the extra calculations. Turn off direction, we don't need the extra calculations. And, oh yeah, I don't want to go all the way up to 50. That's too smooth. Even 10%. And then here it should begin. Yeah, now they're not taking time to fade out because we keyframed up into it. And now they shouldn't just scale up out of nowhere. They'll kind of scale in. And it's going to take a little while for them to fade out. So we kind of get this nicer echo coming behind. We'll just see how the overall effect goes because it's really quick. Question to the audience. Should we try and make just another effect out of scratch, or should we tackle a new question? Whichever question gets 2 replies in favor or against will be the one I lean towards. Oh, I didn't pull back on the springiness, which I should have, but... Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. If we pull back on the springiness... Wait, new question, another new question. I think new question wins, so we'll do a new question. I'll just close this one out with grabbing the target, grabbing the delay. I like the spring, but you know, I'm going to change it to a smooth so they smooth out their final shape. And we'll just render that again. And that'll be that one. So start posting new questions. Although Zach has a typed out question. A Y plus cylinder with 2 bend deformers. The first one bending to get to the right. The second bending it back up. How do you link the second to follow the geometry as the first strength is changed? I don't think you can. It doesn't even make any sense. Like, bend deformers don't stack very well, especially now if they're interacting with the same geometry. You can't stack one taller up a pole and one lower down on the pole. That can work, but stacking them a second one bending back up doesn't make sense to me. You would unbend the first one. You don't counterbend the second because they can't counterbend. It's just they're not in the same form when they're kind of picked. Looks like the smoothing is pretty strong. It's taking a while to fade back in. I'm assuming it's fading back in, but yeah, it is, but very, very, very slowly. So let's just take a look. Yeah, that was too strong of a smooth, but I like the spinning effect. It kind of comes out of nowhere. It is a little bit mesmerizing. Save, close. Oh, 2 bends like a pipe. Oh, yeah. Okay, I can answer that easy. So, yeah, so cylinder, it's on Y+. Make a height of 2,000. Give it a whole bunch of subdivisions. We'll give it 100, which is probably way too much, but now we've got a pipe subdivided. Making a bend, you just have to make sure they're in the proper order. So if this bend is here, and we don't even have to change anything, I'll just say I want this to bend 90 degrees. So this is bending first. So if you wanted to bend something further along, that further along thing has to come before the first one. So if I were to duplicate this bend above, if I scoot this up, you can see I've now got a second bend that is coherent. So that one's calculating. So that one could now be bent -90. So what you have to do is essentially imagine these in a vertical format. I can't turn them off like that, but this one is on the top of the pipe. That has to calculate first. And as we move down, and that's because all these bends are up on Y. So if we're up on Y, the top one goes first, the next one goes second, the third one down would go third. And we can keep on bending these in that way. So let's make this more complicated. We'll put one there. We'll take this bend and move it up significantly. We can go as far up as we want until we start overriding geometry, and it's going to stretch it in a weird way. But as long as those aren't overlapping, then that's fine. And then we'll make another one we'll go further down. And keep in mind, we can even shorten it. So let's make this one a very tight turn of 50. And if I move it further down, then those other two are still fine. I can scoot this down, and then we can make another one down below. We'll make this one extra smooth at 400, and we'll counterbend the other way. And as long as I move this down far enough, oh yeah, you do have to be careful here that if they start overlapping each other like that, that can cause a problem. So you kind of want to just make sure that they don't overlap in that same spacing. And yeah, so you can keep on doing multiple bends here as long as we keep on traveling down the pipe, and you see that there's no overlap here. This one's a little tight, so it doesn't look as smooth. So as I increase the scale of that one, it'll have more geometry to actually have done the bend. But yeah, bending around. I mean, it depends on the situation of what you're doing, because this would be better to design as a spline and just do a single sweep, or it would be better to potentially just rig up a simple joint chain, like a joint chain traveling upward. I mean, that would be a lot of keyframes to individually bend the individual joints as they go, but you know, that's controllable. So yeah, multiple bends. Just make sure that they go essentially in reverse order from top to bottom, and then they should be stacking correctly. Oh, you want to animate the strength of the bottom one. If we animated the strength here, they're probably going to start passing through each other. No, actually, no, that works. Yeah, this does work here, as long as you don't make them overlap each other. Yeah, that one worked. That one works. So as long as you do them in the proper order. Yeah, see, this one is, because I'm not sure exactly where, but it's passing through. That's, as it bends, it's slightly passing through this bend deformer, and then that breaks that. Like I said, this is not, I don't like using bends, except you have to use them in very specific ways, otherwise you're going to get them exploding like that, and they can easily pass through each other. So these specifics matter about where they're placed. I know what you mean, though. I mean, we see a little bit of that problem, like, because I placed them carefully with no overlaps, but you can't see right there, we do get that stretching, and we could potentially, depending on where things are placed. In fact, if I take this bend and I just start moving it up, it's going to start breaking it more and more and more. And in theory, that's fine down here, but it's breaking the upper one because they pass over each other. So one geometry is passing through the bend. This bend is not limited to just what's inside of it. And we can't just say to limit it to what's inside of it, because then it won't affect everything that comes after. So a way around that potentially, again, my brain goes to a joint chain, but you could make separate pieces of geometry for each bend and then link them. Yeah, let's undo that. So that's kind of working. I'll save this as a simple example. But yeah, you see the problem. If I move this up, which is a valid thing to do, you see that, just look at this bend. As I move it up, that is correct. It's not breaking anything. But then if you move further up, that geometry is now passed into the window of this one, and it does cause it to break. So let's say that we're in a situation that's going to happen. We don't want it to. So new scene file. Let's see if we can make this work. What's the cleanest way to do it? We could do this with a cylinder. I'm going to use some splines to do it because it's going to make the rig easier to make. So I want a straight spline. So the easiest way to do that is just with a helix. I'm going to give it no intermediate points, and I can type in it has exactly 20. I want this to be going up and down. Okay, cool. We've got a height of 200. So that becomes a single pipe segment. I can say that gets, we want to stay in the world of bend deformers. So here's a bend deformer. And I'm pretty sure I can just say fit the parent. And I am now free to bend that spline 90 degrees. Okay, that can be fed into a sweep, of course. So let's feed that into a sweep with an end side. And again, 12 and the radius 20. Okay, so we got a nice pipe going. Now we need a second pipe with a different bend. Well, let's see if we can do this. I'm going to duplicate the entire rig. Do we connect it on that or on the helix? I'm pretty sure we can do the helix, but as long as it's at 0, I'm not sure which is better. I'll do it on the sweep. I just honestly don't know which is better. Animation tag. Let's see if we can do it this way. Animation tag align to spline. And I'm going to say the spline you're aligned to, sweep 1, is the first helix. Yeah, that's actually lined up properly. If I move it up, you should see, oh, it doesn't see the bend. It's not seeing the deformed state. That's fine. Put this into a connect object. So that's now a connected thing. It still creates the sweep properly. I will delete that and make a new duplicate. So let's just call this 2. This will be 1. So sweep 2 will be aligning to a spline. The spline will be the helix, so it actually sees the baked version. So now it should, oh, come on. It's not being acknowledged as a spline. That's a thing a connect can do. Okay, fine. We'll force it to be a spline because it doesn't know it's a spline. So put it in the spline mask, and now it should be treated as a spline. I might have to drag the spline mask in. Oh, wow. Even that is not seeing it. And that is live, right? Okay, that's a bit of a pain. I thought this would make it easier, but it is not acknowledging that as a spline properly. If I make this editable, it returns a spline. You see it, you know, there it suddenly jumps into position when I make it editable. You know what? Like, well, here I'm trying to do it with a bend, but if you did want to make a series of different bends here, another thought is, I don't know if this is a good idea. We'll see what happens. Let's go back to our friend the MoSpline. I can put that in. Now, I want it to be a line, and I would like it to be up by default, so we can give it a initial angle of 90. The width, I don't want it to control the width. Is there any way to tell it not to? Complete spline, spline segment. It's already in simple mode. I think it just creates a thickness. I thought if we put on line mode it didn't, but I guess it does. So width of 20, and we do not need 100 points. We need 50. We need 20. There we go. Okay. So something we can do now. Let's see if the rig works. If I start increasing this, I can just type in 90 and get a bend of 90. So now duplicating that, call that 2. Let's see if the concept actually works now. Align to spline, MoSpline, drag that in, and bend. Yeah, look at that. It's actually traveling along it. And now if I say tangential, we need the correct rotation, which means that needed to be pointing on Z plus. So select the axis tool, and I can spin this 90 degrees. And kind of popped, but yeah, there it's there. Now this original one also should have been facing. I'm going to spin that so Z is forward. Okay. Now, it's not perfectly aligning. I was hoping it would. It makes sense why it's not, though. We need it to be a little bit straightened on the end. So possibly we could say that that's... it's the first one. Can we straighten? Yeah, that straightens it out. If I do that, it was a straight line. The movement's so weird. Can we overshoot? Actually, an overshoot would be neat, even just a little bit. So end, extend, yes, extend, no curve, no spiral, no scale. Don't smooth it. That might sort of kind of work. Extend start. Also 0, 0, 0. Is scaling a variable? No, I didn't think it was. That's why I looked it up. So now you can see I'm extending that one, and that is over there on the edge. I really want that to align, but maybe it pre-bends a little bit as well. Yeah. If we look at this from the side, you see how that is not perfectly flat, and that is actually what we're seeing. Potentially we can compensate for that as well by giving it a little bit of negative. Oh, look, there is some curve still, though.
Not smooth? Nope, doesn't like that. Can that be fixed with that? Yeah, I can straighten it there. So is it possible to give this that treatment? It's a little... at this point we're getting really noodly. Yeah, it's over-bending there. I think that this is affecting the overall curvature, which is not what we want. We want that nice, clean, final 90. But yeah, well, the idea was supposed to be that we could align it here, and now we're free to, like, bend each of these. Oop, don't bend that one, but we do want to bend its curve. So then that could bend one way or the other, or we could bend, you know, we can do multiple angles was the idea. So we could just start creating a series of those. And if we were able to get them perfectly aligned, we could even turn off the caps. So we could have grabbed these and said cap off, and then put the entire thing into a connect object. And then if we always kept things at 90-degree increments, then these would weld together, and then you would get a continuous pipe that would, you know, essentially be a singular volume. We've hit a couple roadblocks here, even though this rig is neat. I want to see what's the best way to do this. I changed a lot of settings. I'm just going to open a new file with a MoSpline, no rotation, default. Okay, so it should be pretty clean again. Can I bend a MoSpline and will it see it? It's kind of a long shot at this point because I don't know why it would treat a MoSpline differently than a regular spline, but hey, you never know. Duplicate, animation, align the spline, see the MoSpline. Nope, just travels up. It doesn't see the deformed position. That's frustrating. A final thought, maybe. I guess I destroyed those. We're doing a lot of workarounds to do something simple. I mean, I do this all the time when I'm building rigs. But a thought is, let's get that straight spline again. 0, 0, 0, 20 points, aiming upward, no subdivisions. So that should be a helix line aiming straight up. Oh, I guess the height should still be good. We just want 20 points. Okay, so you get that line aiming straight up. That's fine. Now, can I deform that line here? Essentially, I want it to deform inside of the sweep. But, and then I can probably get it to ignore it by putting it into a null. Yeah, I wanted it to ignore it. Can I get the MoSpline to reference this one? And if that doesn't work, I bet the tracer will. So yeah, there's hope for that. Default, simple, spline mode actually, and I want it to reference, is it the destination spline? I don't think so. It's this one, source spline. Can you see a deformed spline as your deformation? No. Generation mode? No. Rail spline? No. It refuses to see this deformed. Now, if I put the connect object in it, that actually has a possibility of working because the MoSpline is looking for a spline. Nope, still doesn't see it. Oh wait, it went down to the bottom. Does that make sense? I don't know. Delete that. MoSpline. Width of 20? No. That's being very strange. I think maybe it is seeing that spline. No. Don't connect. Yeah, the MoSpline is not successfully seeing that. I'll try my last trick, which is always putting into a spline mask to force it to be a spline. Does it see that? Yeah, it did see that. Can we bend it? It doesn't update on the bend. Okay, last try. Hey, look, it will refresh. Does it refresh with a proper order, or is it like a full-on? Yeah, look at the weirdness of that. Like, it's going to occasionally, depending on where I move my mouse, it might occasionally refresh, so it's kind of seeing it. Not a good rig if it's that inconsistent. So my last try that I can think of is a tracer object. Tracers they kind of work. They're weird tracers are weird. So I will put down the final result and then tell it to, is it connect? I can never remember if it's connect all objects. Let's say connect elements. Yeah, okay. So that did draw it, but I don't think it's going to remember it. So now we grab the bend. Oh yeah, look, so the tracer can see it. Let's see how much we can simplify it to force it to see it. Can we see the connect object? Yes. Can we go back another step and just see the helix? Yes, it can. All right, way to go, tracer object. Okay, we're back to something relatively simple. I've got a bend inside of a helix, and it's bending that. Now, unfortunately, we don't see it as a live spline we could link to. And I think I could put this in here. So this will just be 1, and then that is now 1. So this tracer is also tracer 1. It is actively seeing it, and it seems to be updating correctly. It's going to have a frame of lag unless we make sure that its source is above it. So just keep that in mind. All right, so now we have a bend. I'm going to say I want a 90-degree bend. All right, you see it did refresh, but maybe not until I mouse over it. But if it mouses over when you scroll in the viewport, that means it will render correctly. If you have to like click an object to refresh, sometimes it won't guarantee a render. But now, I don't know for sure. Yeah, you see that we still get the problem here where it's already pre-bending a little bit. But if we shrink this bend a little bit, so let's make the height not quite as much. You see, as long as it's in far enough that we can get that flat edge again. I'm not sure how far we have to go to get a fully flat edge. I don't think too far. So just a little bit, and that becomes flat. So if that is the case, the line is still correct. So, but that is the new source. That is a little worrying. Let me make a null. That is at the origin of 1. So then we make a duplicate of that to become 2, 2, 2, 2. Will this align? That is the question. Align the spline. The spline is the tracer. Pull. Look at it. Okay, it travels over. That's good. Turn on tangent, and it rotates. I didn't align these on Z. I should have axis and spin that up onto Z, which will force it forward. And also this one, spin that one upward. That one won't change as I rotate. Okay. Okay, so these already don't have caps, and the idea here is I should be able to grab this original bend and change it. Let's see, is it going to update? It is tangential. It's not refreshing very well. If I go frame forward, it does snap into position. That's a pretty rough one. The advantage here is you see that it is a continuous, it looks continuous here because of the way we built them. So those could be, they're not even being welded right now. They look like they're welded because they're so perfectly aligned. So yeah, that's a thing. But yeah, this is definitely a little bit of a lag. I think it could render correctly. It's hard to know for sure. Let's try resetting the strength to 0, and at the end have it be, nope, not 360, 90. Let's see. Yeah, you see there's that one frame of lag here. I wonder if we could tell this to calculate it later, if I say this should generate on expressions. Oh yeah, I told the align the spline tag to calculate it at later, and now you see it is properly refreshing in the viewport. That doesn't mean it will be correct on slide. Yeah, see, it's not there, but if I mouse over, no. But it was doing it correctly on playback. It's not perfect, though. You can even see here it doesn't have a good alignment. If I play forward, it's suddenly going to snap a different orientation. But the idea here being these are completely independent rigs, so it doesn't matter what I do to bend this one. It can't have an effect on the other one. Like, they're just not built that way. So that is free to do its own thing. But yeah, the alignments are still potentially a problem. This frame of lag is potentially a problem. It's a lot of work to make it go. I mean, making additional sections is pretty trivial. I guess that is the benefit. 180. Now I can just take the 3. If I, don't worry about renaming everything. We just say, hey, that one should align to that one, and it'll just jump to the next one, and now we're free to connect. So it'd be pretty quick to make additional bits of rig. And then at the end of the day, as long as we turn on this connect, it will return, if I make this editable, it should return just a polygon object, because a connect object, we've done a lot of research on this because of tools we're working on. If you feed a spline into a connect object, if you feed only splines into a connect object, the connect object will return them as a spline. If you feed only polygons, it will return only polygons. If you feed in a mixture of polygons and splines, it's like, no, there's no splines. I am just a polygon. It doesn't matter if you have 100 polygon objects, or you can have 100 spline objects. If you put a single polygon in there, it's like, nope, I'm a polygon object now. So that's just a fact about it. But yeah, these can be stacked up now. They're mostly independent. And I mean, if you're doing animation, then that could be, I don't know if there would be any kind of issues, but with this not being, if you're not animating, you're just kind of building a rig, as long as you make sure you're, you refresh it, you refresh every once in a while, then those would be correctly traveling and doing their own thing. I'm assuming you're animating, but even that does seem to work. If, let's actually do that. I'll grab all the bends in their current final state, keyframe, go to the beginning, and at the beginning they'll be at 0. It's going to look wrong there, but as soon as I go 1 frame forward, or is it 2 frames lag now? I mean, those are in the correct stacking order. Yeah, no, the frame of lag came back. That's strange. But yeah, you can see these are now bending in a way that the bends could not possibly handle. I don't understand why these are in the wrong order, though. Like when there's just 1, it was correctly doing it. Now there's 2 and it doesn't? Why would that be the case? Yeah, actually, look, it's rebroken again. If I hit delete the other one, this is not correctly on it. I mean, I think it will be if I hit pause, but it's not during playback. Very strange. Very strange indeed. I'll save that. Where are we? Oh, we're almost right at the end. I'll see if there's any quick questions. And other than that, we should be wrapping up here. Multi-bend B. Again, these scene files will be available on Patreon. Let's see. Oh yeah, Tobias, as always, shouting out that we have the Slack community. You can go and join the Rocket Lasso Slack. There are weekly and monthly contests and challenges. You can go check it out. I just put the link also inside of YouTube. Demi is asking about an effect. Is it possible to affect the points of an FFD deformer with effectors or a field? No, not directly. But you can use Espresso and do a workaround. And it's really weird to do. Trying to think if it's worth going into. Because the point order matters. It's a big workaround. You cannot inherently deform. I mean, we might actually need I don't even know that you need Espresso. Let's try and do the most basic version, and I don't know if it'll work or not. So, what do we got to do? And it can get weird. Let's see what happens. So we got a 3x3x3, and we'll stick with the 3x3x3. Now, the point order. Let's go to structure, and you'll see if I double click here, that is point 1, that is point 2, that is point 3. Okay, so you can even see here that what it's doing is it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and presumably, if I keep on going, it's going to jump to 1, 2, 3. So that's our point order: 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Next layer, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we can't lock this to a cube because it's the wrong point order. But if I make a plane and I set the plane to be the exact same setup, so 300 by 300, and for some reason 300, and this is the only place in cinema that something defaults to 300. And then this has a subdivision of 1. Is it 1? I think we have to say 2. Yeah, so 2. So if I take that and I put this into a cloner and move the cloner forward 150 minus 150, and then I want this not to be a grid but to be linear. I want there to be 3 copies, and it will push them further back. That's per step. I'm going to say end point. I want them to be back on Z 300. So You now see that I've got that. Now, making this plane editable, let's quickly take a look at it. And if I go back to structure and I go to point 1, look, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5. So those are now in order. And then it's going to make a duplicate of that here, and that'll be the next point, and then the next point. So if that's our concept here, these now have the exact same point layout and point order of the FFD. Collapsing that down into a connect object, that point order should be maintained. I think. Let's save that. You might ask yourself, how do I know all this? I don't know. I do a lot of experiments in Cinema 4D. FFD deformed. Okay. Now, I suppose the next step is to deform it. So let's make a random effector, drop it inside the connect. I would like it to deform the points. There we go. We got a deformation of points. Set it to noise, set it to indexed, and there we should have those wiggling around doing their thing. Bum, 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 bum. Dancing, dancing, dancing. Okay. This connect object hopefully has those point orders. Make sure it doesn't weld. If they weld together, it'll confuse everything. Now, let's see if this works. On the FFD deformer, I want it to get a rigging pose morph. I want this to match the points. The points of what? Well, in the tag, I want it to be a external object. The external object is that connect. Oh, it looks like the point order is not... Wait, why are they offset in space? Mixing. Absolute. No. Animate. That's weird. Why did it jump? I don't understand. We're only affecting the points. That's weird. Well, why did it move? Maybe, oh, maybe because this one's centered here. Maybe. All right, I'm going to try changing the connect object to be a grid array of 1 by 3 with a depth of 100 and, a depth of 300. No, it's per step, so let's say endpoint 300. And then that's at 0. This is at minus 150. So now if I set the axis of that to 0, maybe? That's at 150 now. 0, please. There. Okay, that's... Is that all aligned now? Turn off axis before I forget. Okay, that maybe is aligned. Okay, there we go. I had moved the axis off, and I guess it has to be zeroed out. So anyway, now look at that. I am now deforming some geometry and then using the morph tag to say, hey, take on the properties of whatever I was deforming. And so what's kind of cool about that is there's so many different things that you can't deform that it's not valid to deform without something like this. So if I were to make something like a figure and blob him up, volume builder, volume mesher, inflate it a bit with a dilate, and now just put it into a null and put the FFD in there with it. Now we can hide that geometry, and now he's getting his wiggle. He's getting all wiggly based on a random deformer, and the random deformer is not affecting his individual points, it's affecting the FFD, which is now relatively affecting his individual points. Super crazy rig to do. I actually did this in one of the Ricochet animations in the soap bubble, because you can't deform splines very well with a lot of things. So I was deforming the soap bubble and the Ricochet with a rig like this. Now, we did the simplest possible version of this. You should be able to kind of make any version of it. If I say This should be 4 by 4 by 4. Everything's going to get super duper like messed up there. But, and I don't know if this will fix itself. Oh, the plane is broken. I didn't realize I made the plane editable. Easy now. Okay, we'll do that. And now that will also be 3 by 3, which is the equivalent. And then the cloner will go up to 4. There we go. As soon as we match them, for some reason the guide turned upside down. Maybe the point orders. That's weird. Maybe the point order's out of whack. But yeah, if you make them matching. Oh, maybe that needs to be Z minus. Maybe. Yeah, Z minus. So it flipped upside down. So now it's the point order. It's matching the points. So as long as we keep on like changing the rig, and you could easily imagine making an espresso rig here that you could just change this to look at the FFD and set that to any resolution you want. It would automatically change the plane. It would automatically change the cloner. Just the setup. So along those lines, it's relatively straightforward. I have had times where it didn't work very well and it kind of exploded. But you know, here we can start pushing this like quite a bit. And just by the nature of it, the figure is going to be deforming like not that much. So even though the FFD looks super crazy, you see that we're getting something very coherent out of the final model. And yeah, that's that. Bloop, 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 bloop. Pretty crazy though. So I'll give that a save in the state. And of course you can morph it in and out, which is cool. Oh yeah, that might be the thing, is like it doesn't know how to morph back into its original position. So we might want to make a undeformed one so it can morph back to that, or leave it fully deformed, and then here, if I pull this back, that should put it back to a non-deformed position. I think the spacing might need to be bigger. Something seems a little off, but anyway, that's where I'm gonna go with that one. Let's see if there's any closing anythings. Save. Okay, back to the chat, just check things out. Quick question. We'll see Trey. Using male puppet with motion tired. Nothing I do will make the male snap at the pose. Does have animation, but stuck at T-pose. Yeah, sorry. That's like a tech support question. It's not really a live show type of question. So yeah, that should cover that. Yeah, and it's for Demi. This is it's quite the workaround, but it's a very meticulous kind of code-based way of making it work. Bihavna, in some of the bonus streams, we did try and tackle the idea of magnetic grains, like tiny little spikes of magnet, and using some very crazy and specific X particles techniques, I was able to get some promising results, but it wouldn't work at scale. Like it would work with a handful, but as soon as I cranked it up higher, it just stopped working. I was working with a tech support over at Cydium for a while, and it just was, they're like, oh, that's weird, but then I never heard back about it. So yeah, it was a thing. And I actually also built a rig that, oh, actually it might be fun to just pull this up. I'll see if I can track it down, because like seriously, we spent weeks in the bonus stream trying to figure it out. It was like the first project we tackled in the bonus streams. Where can I find it? Live shows, off the record episodes, sand effects. Was it under sand effects, or was it after we gave up on sand? Nope. Nope. Why is the folder empty? Crumple, crystal growth. When did we tackle those? Ribbon. Oh yeah, that's when we moved on to the ribbon. We explored a lot of tricky things. Oh, okay, the magnets were categorized underneath the sand project. Let's see if there's any renders. Yeah, okay, let's see what we got here. Oh man, I missed these. These were cool, but they end up not working. And these took forever to calculate. Like you couldn't pre-roll it. Like it was taking like minutes just to calculate the frames, and these are not that high of a resolution. So here's a series of the experiments, and these are back from a couple years ago. So let's see what we get. So do you see, this is, you know, can I pause it? So this is Cinema 4D dynamics. And I even was trying to keep myself clear on it. So these are individual cubes. And then I forced individual, so the red tips are an attractive force, and then the blue are this repulsive force to each other. So everything we see here is emergent behavior. It's crazy slow, and you see the resolution is not that high. But these will find each other, and you see how they start like snapping and building these strings at a particular direction. So we got a bunch of these. See how these align with each other, and then they start snapping. And look at how we do get these, they do start forming those threads. But these animations are so short because they took so long to calculate. But yeah, look at these. You imagine this inside of, like the structure building is really cool. But like, it's so small and specific. But the emergent properties were cool. Let me grab a thing. So I'll have to be careful around the computer, and I won't be able to show it too zoomed up. But here's like a little bottle of mineral water, and inside of it are a bunch of metallic, like tiny little flecks. And then if you take a magnet and you put it to it, then it starts forming like these spikes. I don't know how well that's going to show up. No, even worse if I don't have it blocked. But yeah, you start getting like these little spikes. We could Google the image, but yeah, you get these little spikes popping into it. And what's cool, the part that was cool, is that this is the emergent property. By putting in the positive and the negative force and having them kind of attract and repel in the proper kind of way, it naturally started doing that, which is cool. But like I said, it was so slow, and these forces are fighting each other. And to do this test render is probably running for like 20 minutes just to get a little bit of feedback. And it was never quite perfect. It's hard to do iterations. And then because you couldn't make more of them, it was never going to look that good as a render. Like this kind of thing I let run overnight. But like the way it's growing is pretty cool. But in order for that to look like reasonable for like a particle system, it'd have to be like 10 times the resolution. And the testing was just so difficult. And then here's like, this was me flipping it into, like literally I just put these instead of the metal flakes. It's still those same dynamic properties happening, but there's metal flakes instead. And again, the resolution, very low. Yep. Larger chunks, trying to make them look a little bit more like iron. And that's, I think, the biggest one I tried to do. And again, I mean, the emergent structure is cool. Like them lining up with each other, because I think they're randomly placed even in the beginning. Like they snap into their orientation just based on what all the other ones are doing. So cool, fun, incredibly difficult. But that's the type of stuff we sometimes tackle in the bonus streams. Speaking of bonus streams, well, a couple things. I think this is a very good time to be supporting Rocket Lasso on Patreon, because not only am I doing the bonus streams, and they get first word, you also get discounts. You get discounts on the plugin. So on Recall and on Ricochet, there are coupons for more than the value of a month. In fact, now I think about it, maybe I should kill off the discounts at a certain point. But right now, if you joined at the $20 level, you will get a coupon for $21 off Ricochet, and you'll get a coupon for $21 off of Recall. So you'd actually be joining for $20 and saving $42, which is not something I thought about until just now. So that could be a downside to that. But in addition to that, and the live streams, and getting all the scene files that I just created today, I am getting really close to, in probably like a couple weeks, we'll be done with the gem project. We've been spending quite a few of the last weeks modeling every single episode, modeling another diamond, different gemstone cuts. And yesterday's stream, we made this heart cut diamond. And yeah, all of these have been made from scratch. I recorded the entire process for the live stream, and there's some heart duplicates because those were the new one. But each of these is a unique cut. They're all planar. They're very, very clean models, and we're even working on a collection of materials to go along with it. So if I were to open up Redshift, I've got a, I think, pretty dang mathematically correct diamond material, ruby material, emerald material, sapphire material, and we might make a few others as we go. So let that render for a second, and I guess while it's chugging for a moment, I'll pull up the link to Patreon. Aha! Oh, so here's a link to the Rocket Lasso Patreon. So you can go and check it out, and you get lots of cool things. It's a good time to join. But yeah, in this one, I was doing a test of the new heart cut. So you can see that that one has got the diamond material, and the others have the sapphire material set up with like the proper refractive properties. And I mean, this is not a final scene by any means, but the actual gems are pretty cool. And I'm hoping maybe to make a tutorial. Well, I'm going to release these on Patreon. And I also hope to make a tutorial about adding imperfections to them, like maybe having them be shattered on the inside or internal scratches. But we'll have to see. Who knows? That may or may not happen. But it has been fun and challenging to make these. We are, what episode are we on? Like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H? It might be like the 8th week in a row of those live streams, like on Tuesdays, making these. And we've done like a different technique for modeling them like almost every single time. But yeah, that's just another kind of cool thing out there in the world while we are continuing to work on plugins over here. So again, if you haven't gone and checked out Ricochet, I think it's really cool. I think, especially, I haven't kind of promoted it this way, but I think it's a really good tool for NFT artists as well, for them being able to just make cool new things that we couldn't have made before. And I am planning on, in hopefully some of the bonus streams as well, starting to build out example scene files to give away for free for Ricochet, where it's like, oh, as long as you have Ricochet, then you can open up this whole library of files of like, here's doing electricity, and here's doing spider webs, and you just be able to open up files. So that's a plan as well, and that would just be free on the website. But anyway, that should wrap this one up. Definitely go and check out Patreon for the coupons for Ricochet and for all the scene files. In any case, I'll see everybody in a week for the regular live stream. I might have to find a guest. We haven't had a guest in a little while. And then I think I'm going to be doing a bonus stream tomorrow, the Patreon bonus stream, but that's going to wrap it up. So thank you so much, everybody, and I'll see you in a week. Bye-bye.